Very warm welcome to the show to top jockey Danny Mullins. Danny, hope you're well.
Good evening. Yeah, it's great to be on.
Great to have you on as well, and plenty to talk about over the festive period. Lots of really exciting and informative action as well over the festive time, particularly, of course, at Leopardstown, but also at Limerick as well. Let's start by looking at Lossiemouth, who was a really impressive winner in the Knight Frank Juvenile Hurdle. Now, I'd be interested to get your take on what the vibes are in Ireland about this filly, because she's done everything right so far really well, hasn't she?
She has, she was very good. She was second string when I was lucky enough to ride her in Fairy House and won very impressively that day. And, the expected improvement was there in Leopardstown when she beat what I think is also a very good filly in Gaillard Du Mesnil. I suppose the thing you'd have to love about Lossiemouth is how professional she is for a juvenile. She jumps well. She's a decent ride, and she just picks up, and it just makes her very hard to beat.
Yeah, she does seem to do things pretty easily. We're having a look back at this Knight Frank Juvenile Hurdle now, and she's a little bit sketchy at some of her hurdles, but it doesn't seem to stop her engine. And for one who's so inexperienced, surely there's plenty more to come, you'd think.
I think so, and that race in Leopardstown, there wasn't a whole lot of pace early on in the race, which probably left my filly a little bit keen for the first part of it, but you'd have to think it would have suited Lossiemouth as well if they'd gone a stronger gallop. And when she steps up into Grade 1 company, there should be more truly run races, and you'd have to think that will have to be of benefit to her as well.
Yeah, and she's very high up now in the Triumph Hurdle market for the Cheltenham Festival. At this point, do you think she is very much the one to beat for that?
You'd have to think so, on what we've seen so far. I think maybe Gary Moore has a horse. Is it Beau Zenith would be one that still has a lot of potential, but he needs to show that he's coming up to Lossiemouth's level rather than her proving it to him, I think.
Yeah, and Beau Zenith runs tomorrow at Sandown. The horse that he beat in second in France was a horse called Blood Destiny, Danny. I don't know if you know much about this horse. Obviously, Willie Mullins trains him, and he won pretty impressively himself on Irish debut. How far do you think he could climb the ladder?
Yeah, he'd be well able to climb the ladder. He was good in Cork. It was probably, maybe a bit of a stop-start race down in Cork, but a bit of class got him there to win, and that's all he could do on the day. It'll be interesting to see were Blood Destiny, Gaillard Du Mesnil and Lossiemouth meet in the Grade 1 in Leopardstown at the Dublin Racing Festival. That would be a very informative race before Cheltenham, but Willie might want to split them up a little bit depending on which horses he thinks need more experience or need to get a little bit more tough racing into them before Cheltenham and see. But there are a few very exciting ones to have.
Yes, that spring juvenile hurdle, as you mentioned, at Leopardstown Dublin Racing Festival, that could be some race, I have to say. Let's change tact a little bit, look at the chases now, and Tramore showed a pretty potent turn of foot, I thought, to land what was called the brand new racing post at Novice Chase. This is at Leopardstown as well. What did you make of his performance?
Yeah, it was a good performance. Phil Lower was obviously an odds-on shot on the day, having beat him in a beginner's chase in Navan, I think, a couple of weeks beforehand. But Phil Lower had a run over hurdles when second maybe to Brazil in Naas, and in Navan he was getting, I think, 8 pounds of a 4-year-old allowance, where Tramore had to carry, or he hadn't had a run before Navan. With the run under his belt, he was able to reverse the form. Plus, Phil Lower was only getting 6 pounds. I think as the year goes on, he's going to get less and less weight. And by the time Phil Lower's a 5-year-old, I don't think he gets any allowance with Tramore. So I don't see how he can, turn that around. Just looking at it here now, this is Phil Lower's mistake, which definitely ruined any chance he had of winning the race. But even, you go to the finish, you think he's lost 5 or 6 lengths at a crucial time with that mistake. I think Tramore still would have been the horse to beat on the day. He was a very good winner of the County Hurdle before, and maybe struggled to hit the Grade 1 level over hurdles last year, but he seems to really enjoy chasing. For a horse that's probably not a massive horse, but he's very quick for me to be over a fence, and he's a solid type, and improving all the time.
Yeah, it was a really bad mistake, wasn't it, that Fieldor made at that fence, and to his credit, he boxed on without ever really threatening for that victory. With the outsider of the field finishing second in the end, Tramore having to go past him in the final throws, how would you rate this novice chasing in the context of perhaps other ones that have taken place in both Ireland and the UK this year?
Yeah, Veterinarian, he's not a bad horse as well. He was a big price on the day, but he had been second to Adamantly Chosen in a Grade 2, and Adamantly Chosen was only beaten a handful of lengths in the Grade 1 behind Jerry Colombe in Limerick on Stephen's Day as well. So, I think the form is solid enough, and, I wouldn't be too worried about Visionarian being there. He's a solid yardstick himself, and, Mark dropped in Sanwa and only rode to get there and win. It wasn't as if he set his stall out to go a proper gallop and see who could come and get him. The market is clever. He's not going to burn up his horse. He only needs to get to the winning post in front.
Very much so. That was St Stephen's Day. Let's move on then to the 27th of December and some more experienced chasers as well. And we bring in Blue Lord, who I have to say, Danny, I was really taken by this performance. I thought it was the first time that we'd seen him probably throw his hat in the ring for a tilt at the Champion Chase. Because on this evidence, I would say he's a big player for that now. Yes,
definitely. He'd always been a horse with loads of potential, but I think Leopardstown was the first time for me that I'd seen him maybe, jump well all the way and really finish out his race. I thought Chacun Pour Soi was putting in a good performance, jumped quite well for the whole, and then the second last just finished him off, and he still ran quite a good race to finish third in the end. That was a crucial time he made his mistake, but I couldn't have seen him beat Blue Lord on the day, and Blue Lord is improving all the time. Maybe he needs to improve a little bit more to get to Energumine's level. Edward Stone, is a fair novice coming through as well, who had a little blip over Christmas, but I'm sure he'll be back. It's a competitive division at the moment.
It certainly is. And what I love about this horse most, I think, now, is the way that he travels so sweetly. And jumping doesn't seem to be a problem for him. And as we saw with Chacun Pour Soi and a couple of others in this race, jumping was definitely the bane of their run. But with Blue Lord, not only does it keep him in the race, it gives him an even better chance of winning because he is so slick.
That's it. 2 mile chasers over fences. That's what it's all about. Jump, jump, jump. And, you can see a horse that maybe struggles over hurdles at 2 miles. If they're able to jump a fence well over, they're making so much ground. There's 12 fences over 2 miles, only 8 hurdles. And that has really brought Blue Lord into his own. This was a good performance. He improved plenty from the Clonmel Isle, where he just beat Tornado Flyer. And, this is really where maybe in the past, me personally has had a question mark about Blue Lord finishing out a race, but he's really coming of age now. Went down, jumped the last well, and hit the line really, really strong. It was a solid performance. Now, the fact that he's had a run prior to this, and Chacun Pour Soi didn't have a run, made a bad mistake, I think possibly Chacun could get closer to him at the Dublin Festival, but he just hasn't been able to show those results travelling away from home. So looking at the Dublin Festival, I think Chacun Pour Soi can maybe get closer, but Cheltenham Blue Lord is probably the one that's going to win that battle.
What would your 1, 2, 3 be then for the Champion Chase at the moment with Energumen, Edwardstone and Blue Lord towards the top of the betting? If you had to put those three in an order, how would you do it?
I think Energumen is probably the top dog at the moment. And of the rest of them, I'd struggle to split. They're very closely matched. Blue Lord has won plenty of Grade 1s. Edwardstone at that little blip the last day, that won't be any issue to him. He'll bounce back from that. And it's going to be an interesting race. Last year, Paul really set a target on Shishkin's back and only started to creep into the race at halfway. There were Blue Lord and Edwardstone to go forward and attack a little bit more. Energumene is going to have to be on the pace somewhat more than he was last year, which will make for an exciting race between them. I wouldn't like to be calling it. I think Energumene is the main one, but I wouldn't like to be making a call on the rest so far.
Yeah, it's a mouth-watering prospect, isn't it, that race, I have to say. Let's move on then to a horse that I'm really looking forward to talking to you about in Facile Vega. And this performance at Leopardstown has definitely not really, I don't think, impressed that many people. I mean, I'm one of them. I thought he was going to blow everything away in visually impressive fashion. Yes, he saw off Il Était Temps, but I didn't think it was visually that taking. What did you make of it?
I don't think it was that much of a visually exciting performance as well, but that's just the way the race unfolded. I was riding Il Était Temps and he went down, made a mistake at the first, and from there my race was to ride tactically to try and beat Paul, and Paul rode maybe somewhat like more of a maiden hurdle where he just tipped away in front, and it was always going to be somewhat of a sprint finish. Usually in these grade ones, they're stronger gallop all the way, and a horse like Facile Vega would be maybe 10 clear at the back of the last. And we're watching here halfway down the back. For me, behind, and Mark Walsh was probably thinking the same in the McManus colours on the inside. We weren't going to give Paul any help by getting up beside him and injecting more pace into the race. And, it was very tactical from there. So it is fair to say that it wasn't a big performance, but I think the horse has so much more to give off a strong pace. And, he can only win, even coming around here to the second last. The rest of the field is starting to drop away as Paul is starting to wind it up in front. I've jumped the second last. I think I have a little look behind here just to see where the rest of the field are. And
yeah, cheeky little look.
I was just conscious not to get put in a pocket, but I wasn't going to give Paul any help early in the straight. I was going to leave him as lonely as I could and hope that when we injected the speed at the last that he could make a mistake. And I was on an experienced horse. He'd ran in grade ones plenty as a juvenile, but I got onto his tail, and both of us probably got under the last somewhat. From there to the line, it's very difficult to put distance between horses when you're sprinting like that, and Facile Vega was still able to do probably 4 or 5 lengths. I don't know what the official distance was at the line, but he was still able to run away and win. I would think that performance doesn't rate much higher than what High Definition achieved in his maiden hurdle the day before, and I couldn't split them on form at the moment, but Facile has a lot more to offer.
Whenever I hear from trainer Willie Mullins about Facile Vega over the last couple of seasons, if he's asked what horse are you most looking forward to seeing, he replies Facile Vega. He's done it for the last couple of campaigns, and indeed he did it before Leopardstown's Christmas Festival as well, the horse that he pinpointed as being the one he was most excited about watching once again. Clearly he thinks he's got any amount of talent going forward. How good do you think he could be, Danny?
He has the potential to go to the very top. He jumps well, he's got speed. He could be a horse that could drop back onto the flat and win a good race. He has the scope to jump a fence. Really, the world is his oyster at the moment, and he has that great habit of winning. And
would you earmark him as a Supreme horse or a Ballymore horse? Because that is an argument that has started to rage, even though I always assumed he would just stick to the 2-mile trip.
Sometimes champion bumper horses can be more upstairs, and possibly the Ballymore would be maybe a route for there, but the speed he's got, and he just picks up and he goes every time he's asked. I think usually, from reading between the lines and watching what Willie seems to do, he goes for the race, he has the best chance of winning. And I don't think you'd have a horse that you'd say is definitely ahead of him in either division. What I liked about Leopardstown is when he had to go to the front, he tipped away and quickened up. So that shows he's well able to go at a slightly slower gear. Ballymore will be no problem to him, but he has all the class as well in that sprint finish to get away from an attempt to stay to the Supreme. I suppose the Supreme is the fancy race. You'd think that would be plan A, but he'd have no problem going for a Ballymore as well.
Yeah, and they'll go a much stronger pace, won't they, in the Supreme than they did at Leopardstown. Let's just talk about one more race in this first section, looking back at the Christmas action. Danny, that is the Home by the Lee performance, which was most impressive over 3 miles in Grade 1 company on the 28th of December, and a horse who's definitely climbed to the top of the Stayers Hurdle tree over the last month or so, a horse that I never would have thought about before this campaign, but something has really clicked for him.
Yes, definitely. Home by the Lee, he's really improved this year. In Navan over 2.5, he was off the bridle at halfway, and you think possibly he was going to pull up, but stepping up to 3 miles, he's just really seemed to enjoy it here again. He's a deserving favourite at the moment in the Stayers Hurdle division. I thought Flora Porter improved a huge amount from Navan, which we expected. And, only a couple of lengths behind Home by the Lee. Hopefully, I think with the improvement that can be found with him again before Cheltenham, I think he has a good chance of reversing the form. But, it's advantage Home by the Lee at the moment.
It certainly is. No doubt Florian Porter is going to be tuned up to the minute for that big day at Cheltenham when it does come around. Looking at the Stayers Hurdle picture, Danny, Home by the Lee obviously exploits have put him towards the top of the market, as you say. Of those in behind him, who would you say is the biggest danger at the moment?
If Blazing Cal can make Cheltenham, he's a horse with huge potential. I'm not sure. I think he's definitely still in the race, and I haven't heard any recent updates from Charles Burns. He was a very exciting novice last year. He's the one, maybe, it's unknown how much potential he has. The rest of them, I think, Home by the Lee and Flora Porter, they'll be closely matched. I hope I can reverse form with him come Cheltenham. You look at the English ones of Paisley Park and Champ, they're fighting out the same races, and they're all getting a little bit older as well. So, I think Home by the Lee is a deserving favourite. The rest of them are snapping at his heels, but it'll be interesting to see, can Blazing Cal make it back? He could be the one that hasn't been seen in this division just yet.
Indeed, he is certainly an exciting prospect. Hopefully all goes well with him after his injury. Just looking at Home by the Lee here, he's got a lot of stamina, hasn't he? And I feel like that's a tool that he's developed as the last couple of seasons has gone on. That's definitely an added aspect to his armour, isn't it?
That's it, definitely. He I don't know where he's found that huge improvement. He's had a spell chasing and he dropped back, which can often be the way for horses in the stay and hurdling division, and he's just proved very good this year. He had that run in Down Royal, and that maybe left a little bit of a fitness edge going into Navan, but that performance in Leopardstown at Christmas, there's no question mark over that. That was rock solid, and he's a very good horse. Even looking back, I think has he a mark of something like 146 over fences. That could be a very useful mark. He could be very well in to go for a big handicap chase somewhere down the line as well, but you'd have to stay hurdling with him at the moment.
Danny, thanks very much indeed for your time. Look forward to chatting to you a little bit later on as well. Plenty more to talk about after the next race at Dundalk, including, of course, Conflated and State Man and a couple of others as well. So just before the previous race at Dundalk, we had some very eloquent and concise analysis from Danny Mullins on some of the action at Leopardstown over the Christmas period. And it's time to pick up where we left off with Danny and talk about Conflated, who is winner of the Savills Chase. And I have to say, I thought this was a really, really good ride from Jack Kennedy. And it was clever because I think he took the race by the scruff of the neck from some way out. And I thought, Danny, that it was a race-winning ride.
Yeah, definitely. Jack was very good on Conflated, and the race, it just parked up as we passed the stands with a circuit to go. The race completely parked up, and we bunched. Kenboy sometimes gone up there, he can back out of the lead a little bit and become a bit idle. And it was only from there, down the back straight, that it really started to develop again. And Conflated, he's shown a real liking for Leopardstown. He won, I think, was it the Irish Gold Cup last year with Davy Russell. And, back here again, and he's confirmed that form.
He certainly has. Danny, just before we talk about Conflated a little bit more, just a quick word on Kemboy, who has been officially rated in either the 160s or 170s for every start since December the 1st, 2018. The only time he dropped out down to 158 was when finishing second to Easy Game at Gorham Park earlier in the campaign. And then after his second to Envoy Allen later on at Down Royal, he was back up to 161. And again, after this run, still in the 160s. What a servant he has been.
Yeah, it's a testament to the horse, to run in 3 mile chases and keep performing at that level. Willie was keen to get him out a little bit earlier this year, being that maybe some of his best form can be at Leopardstown. Got that run into him in Gorham Park, and then went to Down Royal, was just touched off in the Grade 1 up there, and ran a cracker behind Conflated, and is sure to be there in the mix come the Dublin Festival again. He hasn't performed at Cheltenham, so he's won around Aintree before. I could see maybe him skipping Cheltenham and having a crack at Aintree as well.
Yeah, I think that would be the most sensible and prudent option, wouldn't it, for a horse of still some significant ability in Kemboy. But let's talk again about Conflated, and just in general terms of this performance, Danny, how high did you rate this?
It was a solid performance, but I wouldn't be thinking as they cross the line, there's a Gold Cup winner. He's a very good horse, but it just maybe that little bit below what has been might be needed to win some of those good races. But prior to last year, when he won his Grade 1 in Leopardstown, he wouldn't have been a horse on many people's radar to compete at this level. So as we've seen with Home by the Lee, who knows how far he can improve again. Last year, I think he was second or third, moving into second or third behind Allaho when keeping up in the Ryanair. So, he's backing up that solid form again. But I don't know if I could see him being either a Ryanair horse or a Gold Cup horse. Allaho looks like he'll be back in action for the Ryanair. Does he take all the beating there? The Gold Cup is a very strong division. But, this was maybe a stop-start race in Leopardstown where Jack gave him quite a good ride to win. Were they to go a very strong gallop in the Gold Cup, could he be one to come home well? But then you're looking at his form, and Gordon and Gigginstown have mainly campaigned him to 2.5 miles. And he's won 2 Grade 1s over 3 miles. So I just questioned why he was probably campaigned that slightly shorter trip. Could he have more potential over the Gold Cup trip of 3 mile 2.5?
Indeed, yeah, could well do, I have to say. Just in terms of the Gold Cup picture in general, we've got the likes of Galopin Deschamps, who I have to say be my idea of the current winner. The likes of L'Empresse, who we saw in action at Kempton. Braveman's Game throwing his hat in the ring as well. And of course, Conflated and a few others to go along with them. Who is the most likely winner in your eyes at the moment?
I think you'd have to look at Galopin Deschamps. His win in the John Durkin was very good. As a novice, you were always looking at it with one eye closed, thinking, oh, he's just running too keen, he's coming at the wings, he's just been very good at the jumping, but he used to throw himself a little bit at his fences, where, it was a very unfortunate fall and nothing to do with a bad jump. But that fall in Cheltenham last year, I think he appeared to stand on his front leg and tripped himself up. He went to Fairyhouse after that, was very professional, and it might have been just the wake-up call he needed. He looked so professional going around in Punchestown in the John Durkin, and I'd say the other lads were probably riding a bit clever that day, thinking if they went a fraction slower, they could get him running a bit fresh and keen, having his first run of the season. And to see him settle so well that day, pick up and, get away from horses over 2.5 miles, there was a lot to like about that. And that's what he needed to learn, that little bit, to become a Gold Cup horse. The ability was never a question mark, but as a novice, he was just a bit exuberant, maybe is the right word for it. And he's ironed out all those issues now, and he looks the finished article in that division.
He certainly does, and I envisage no problems with him staying the distance. I think he'll do it standing on his head, to be honest. Let's have a look at Gaillard Du Mesnil. I have to say, Danny, of all the performances over the Christmas period in Grade 1 company at Leopardstown, I think this one underwhelmed me the most. I know that he won by nearly 8 lengths, but I felt that the race rather fell apart with, of course, the unfortunate ending to Three-Stripe Life's career. And then of those in behind, I feel as though nothing really came from the back. But Gaillard Du Mesnil, yes, he won easily, but I feel when he goes to Cheltenham and possibly to greater tests that lie ahead, he might struggle a tiny bit. I'm interested to see what you think.
Yeah, he could do nothing but win the race, but that was his first win over fences. He'd ran some fine races in defeat behind some decent types, and as you've already said, the race in Leopardstown maybe fell apart a little bit. There was a few fallers through the race, but in fairness to him, he got the job done, and at least he went and won. Those horses that are being placed all the time, you just start to question them, and you're going back and looking at his third in the Irish National last year. He's off a mark of 154. Even as a novice, I don't know if he's going to be a horse that can go and win an RSA. I think maybe he has to improve. He can only win in Leopardstown. He has that potential to be an experienced novice there, but for me, I think he could possibly be a Grand National type. He stays well, and he'll have a reasonably okay weight. He wasn't beaten that far in the Irish National last year over 3 Mile 5, and Aintree could be the place for him to have his big day.
He's a real grinder, a real galloper, isn't he? He reminds me a little bit of Grey Abbey from the bygone era, a horse who just keeps on finding. Let's talk about a horse who carries the same silks, the Donnelly silks, this time State Man, who won the Matheson Hurdle. I thought this was a cracking race, a real thriller. I was very impressed with the way that Vauban returned. I thought it was very promising. But State Man just keeps doing enough and keeps improving.
That's it. And, all the way through last year, had State Man not fallen the first day in Leopardstown, he could have potentially been a Supreme Novice horse. But, that's changed the whole shape of his season. Ended up being, a handicap block on into the County Hurdle last year. Bolted up, followed that by winning Grade 1 in Punchestown. Won again in Punchestown, starting off in the Morgiana. And I thought this rode a nice race. We didn't go flat out by Champion Hurdle standards for the first mile of the race, but we're just crossing the road there now down the back. From here all the way home, we started to pick up. Sharjah is in there. He'd won this race the last 3 or 4 years. He's very effective around Leopardstown, so he's quite a solid yardstick. Vauban was, for me, the horse to take out of the race, having his first start of the season. And Vauban had ran on the Juvenile circuit last year, where races were run so steadily, it was unbelievable. So to see him, operate at a bit more speed, it's a pity the last hurdle wasn't there for Vauban to get more experience. But I'd say he'll go back to the Dublin Festival again. And we're swinging around here now to the second last. The leaders start to drop away. Myself and Patrick are in behind, and we're not giving each other an inch. What I did like about Vauban here, he got under the hurdle, got a little bump in midair, but got away from it so fast. I love that bravery for some of the juveniles coming through. They don't have that. Moved on to Statement's heels here, and when we're going around the last hurdle, Paul hadn't pulled the trigger in front. And as soon as he felt me having a look down his inside, he started to go again. So I didn't want to commit to that gap and run into a cul-de-sac at that stage, and pulled out to go around him. Patrick has came down the centre of the track, maybe just to try something different and see could he maybe get another run out of Sharjah. But Stateman, he probably is the main Irish hope to beat Constitution Hill, if there is any way of doing that. And I think come the Dublin Festival, were the two to meet again, I think Vauban would give him a lot to think about.
Yeah, and the way that you had to bypass that last hurdle, I think you couldn't have stayed on his inside, could you? Because it would have potentially caused a bit of carnage. But very interesting, you say that Vauban could well improve to definitely challenging Stateman for that top Irish position. But I think we here in England are pretty confident about Constitution Hill, so hopefully he can keep doing his stuff, strutting his stuff. One more race to talk to you about, Danny, and that is the New Year's Day Chase at Tramore. A real pulsating battle royale, wasn't it, between Minella Indo and Statler? I have to say, I did think Statler had his measure, but boy, did Minella Indo fight on.
Yes, it was a great performance from Minella Indo. You know, he looked like he's back to himself, and you know, Tramore, it's up and down hills. You turn, you jump. You know, Willie has used it in the past with Album Photo, a horse who was probably a questionable jumper as a novice, to teach him how to operate at a little bit more speed. The Gold Cup in Cheltenham, yeah, they come at you fast, those fences. You know, the new course, the last 3 or 4 fences, when you're turning off the hill there, they come at you a little bit quicker. And Tramore can be a great place to teach the stage chasers how to operate a little bit quicker. And Statler he'd won the 4 mile last year, a strong galloper, but I think what he's going to have learned in Tramore will definitely stand to him going to a Gold Cup. And Indo, you know, he ran a great race with Puppy Power last year, was his second at Plutard, and won it the year before with Jack Kennedy. So, you know, he's a very solid yardstick. But for me, Statler is the one who has the most potential coming out of the race. This wouldn't have been his track, but a good tactical move from Willie to give him that experience before he goes for the Gold Cup.
And I know after this race, Henry de Bromhead said it was one of his best days in racing, seeing Minella Indo do this. And that was just great to hear after, you know, the turbulent time that he and his family have had.
Yeah, definitely. And, you know, it's been a rough year for Henry, and in racing, it's sport, no inches given. Henry has put down his head, and he has a great team behind him, and they're getting back to the top of their game. It's great to see Minella Indo edge this one. Being from the Mullins team, I'd be a little bit biased. I would have loved to see Statler win, but credit to Henry de Bromhead. Unfortunately, at Plutard, didn't get to show his true colours. Well, he didn't even get to show any colours. He was a non-runner in Leopardstown. He'll bounce back again for the Gold Cup. And Henry, you know, he's amazing to train these horses for Cheltenham. He's such a fine record in those championship races, and he's definitely got a few on his hands to give it a crack again this year.
Yeah, he certainly has. It's
Watch live racing now on racingtv.com.